Before you can influence your circumstances, improve your relationships, or build a meaningful future, you must first learn to govern yourself. This is one of the most important principles of power because the person who cannot control his own emotions will eventually be controlled by them. Anger can make you speak when silence would have served you better. Fear can make you retreat from opportunities. Pride can prevent you from admitting a mistake. Impatience can make you abandon something that required more time. The desire for approval can make you betray your own values just to be accepted. In each case, the real opponent is not another person, it is the unchecked impulse within you. Self-command does not mean becoming emotionless. Emotional intelligence is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to recognize an emotion without automatically obeying it. You can feel anger and still choose a measured response. You can feel disappointment without allowing it to define your identity. You can feel fear while continuing to move towards something important. The mature person does not ask, "How can I stop feeling this?" The better question is, what is this feeling trying to tell me? And what response serves my long-term interests? Imagine someone criticizes you publicly. Your first instinct may be to defend yourself immediately. You want to prove that the other person is wrong. You want everyone watching to understand your side. But what if you paused? What if you observed your emotional reaction before responding? That small pause creates psychological distance. Suddenly, you have choices. Perhaps the criticism contains something useful. Perhaps it is based on misunderstanding. Perhaps responding would only create unnecessary conflict. The situation has not changed, but your relationship with the situation has changed. That is where personal power begins. Every day gives you opportunities to practice this discipline. Someone ignores your message. Someone disagrees with your opinion. Someone receives recognition you wanted. Someone challenges your ability. Someone behaves unfairly. These moments reveal the quality of your self-command. Anyone can appear composed when life is comfortable. Your real character becomes visible when your expectations are violated. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to answer every insult. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to prove your worth to every person who questions it. Sometimes the most powerful response is to pause, gather information, and choose your next action deliberately. This is not weakness, it is restraint. A person who controls himself gains something that external success cannot provide: freedom from automatic reactions. He becomes less predictable to his own impulses and more capable of responding intelligently to reality. He can experience anger without becoming cruel, ambition without becoming reckless, confidence without becoming arrogant, and disappointment without becoming bitter. The world will always contain uncertainty, difficult people, unexpected setbacks, and situations you cannot control. Your greatest advantage is therefore not controlling everything around you. It is becoming someone who remains capable of clear thought when circumstances become chaotic. Master your attention, master your impulses, master your words, master your habits. Learn to sit with discomfort without immediately escaping it. Learn to delay gratification. Learn to observe yourself honestly. Because every time you choose discipline over impulse, you strengthen the person you are becoming. And eventually, something changes. You no longer need the world to become easier before you become stronger. You become stronger first. Then the same world that once controlled your emotions begins to reveal something different. Opportunities, lessons, patterns, and choices that you could not see while you were reacting. That is the beginning of real power, not power over others, power over the one person whose decisions will shape your entire future, yourself. Human beings rarely behave according to the reasons they openly provide. We like to believe that our decisions are purely rational, that we carefully examine facts and then choose the best course of action. But beneath conscious reasoning exists another layer, a hidden world of emotions, insecurities, desires, memories, fears, ambitions, and the need to feel significant. Understanding this hidden layer is one of the most valuable forms of psychological awareness you can develop. A person may say they want success, but perhaps what they truly crave is recognition. Someone may insist they are protecting their principles, when beneath that certainty is a fear of appearing weak. Another person may constantly seek attention because somewhere inside they have learned to associate attention with worth. These motives are not always conscious. Sometimes people themselves do not fully understand why they behave the way they do. This is why emotional intelligence begins with observation rather than judgment. When someone becomes unusually defensive, don't immediately attack their defensiveness. Observe it. Ask yourself what might have been threatened: their reputation, their pride, their sense of competence, their identity. When someone constantly needs to prove themselves, observe that pattern. What are they trying to prove, and to whom? When someone becomes angry over a small disagreement, recognize that the visible argument may not be the real issue. The disagreement may simply have touched an older wound, insecurity, or fear. This does not mean becoming suspicious of everyone. It means becoming psychologically attentive. You begin to understand that behavior is often the surface, while motivation exists underneath. And once you understand this, your relationships change. You stop taking every reaction personally. You become less eager to win every argument. You become more patient because you realize that people are often fighting battles you cannot see. But there is an important distinction. Understanding someone's motives does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. You can understand why someone behaves destructively and still establish a firm boundary. Compassion does not require weakness. Awareness does not require submission. In fact, understanding human motives can make you calmer and more decisive. Instead of reacting emotionally to someone's anger, you can ask what is happening beneath it. Instead of becoming consumed by someone's criticism, you can examine whether the criticism contains useful information or merely reflects their own frustration. Instead of desperately seeking approval, you can recognize that another person's opinion is influenced by their own experiences, expectations, and emotional state. This awareness gives you distance, and distance gives you choice. The goal is not to become a person who constantly analyzes everyone around you. The goal is to become observant enough that you are no longer easily controlled by appearances. Most importantly, turn this awareness toward your self. Your own motives deserve examination. Why do you want recognition? Why does criticism hurt you so deeply? Why do you feel the need to prove yourself? Why do certain people trigger strong emotional reactions? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are transformative because self-awareness begins where self-deception ends. The more honestly you understand your own hidden motives, the less power they have over you. You become capable of choosing your actions consciously instead of being unconsciously driven by insecurity, ego, fear, or the hunger for approval. That is real psychological power. You are no longer merely reacting to the world. You are learning to understand the forces within yourself, and that understanding gives you the freedom to choose who you become. Your reputation is one of the most powerful invisible forces shaping your life. It follows you into rooms before you arrive, influences how people interpret your words, and affects whether others trust your judgment, reliability, and character. Yet reputation is often misunderstood. Many people try to build it by controlling appearances, constantly proving themselves or seeking approval. But lasting reputation cannot be manufactured through performance alone. It is built slowly through repeated behavior. Think about the people you instinctively trust. You probably do not trust them because they once made an impressive speech about being trustworthy. You trust them because their actions have repeatedly confirmed their words. They show up when they say they will. They keep promises. They remain composed under pressure. They take responsibility when they make mistakes. Their behavior creates a pattern, and that pattern creates confidence. This reveals an important psychological principle. People evaluate consistency more deeply than isolated moments. Anyone can behave exceptionally for one day. Anyone can appear confident for an hour. Anyone can make promises when circumstances are easy. But character becomes visible when the situation becomes uncomfortable. Your reputation is therefore being built every day, whether you are consciously building it or not. Every conversation leaves an impression. Every commitment you keep strengthens credibility. Every unnecessary argument you avoid demonstrates emotional control. Every time you take responsibility instead of blaming someone else, you communicate maturity. And every time your behavior contradicts your words, you weaken the trust others have placed in you. This does not mean obsessing over what everyone thinks of you. That would be another form of weakness. You cannot control every opinion, and trying to do so will exhaust you. Instead, focus on becoming the kind of person whose behavior remains consistent with their values. Let your reputation become the natural consequence of your character. If you want to be known as disciplined, practice discipline when nobody is watching. If you want to be respected as reliable, become someone who keeps commitments even when keeping them becomes inconvenient. If you want people to see you as emotionally mature, learn to disagree without becoming disrespectful. Your reputation should not be a costume you wear in public. It should be the reflection of who you have trained yourself to become in private. There will also be moments when someone misunderstands you. They may judge you unfairly. They may tell others a story about you that is incomplete or inaccurate. Your instinct may be to immediately defend yourself, explain everything, and convince everyone of your innocence. But sometimes excessive explanation weakens your position. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. Let your long-term behavior speak louder than a temporary accusation. Time has a way of revealing patterns. If your actions consistently contradict the false image someone has created, people who observe carefully will eventually recognize the difference. This is why patience is part of reputation. Do not destroy years of credibility because of one emotional moment. Do not allow anger to make you behave in a way that contradicts the person you are trying to become. And remember that reputation is not only about how others see you. It also influences how you see yourself. When you repeatedly keep promises to yourself, you begin trusting yourself. When you repeatedly abandon your commitments, you begin doubting yourself. This is where reputation becomes self-mastery. Build a reputation with yourself. Become someone you can depend on. When you say you will wake up and work, do it. When you say you will stop wasting your time, take action. When you recognize a weakness, confront it instead of hiding it. When you make a mistake, correct it instead of creating excuses. Your private reputation eventually becomes your public character, and that is why you should stop chasing the appearance of power and start building the substance of it. Let other people speculate. Let them underestimate you. Let them misunderstand you temporarily. Your responsibility is not to control every narrative. Your responsibility is to control your conduct. Because in the long run, people remember patterns more than promises. They remember who remained calm, who remained reliable, who kept their word, who treated others with dignity, who did not collapse under pressure, who continued growing when circumstances became difficult. That is the reputation worth building. Not a reputation based on fear, not one based on attention, not one based on manipulation, but one built on competence, consistency, emotional intelligence, and character. Build that reputation patiently, because once your actions repeatedly confirm your values, you no longer need to announce who you are. People will already know. Strategic patience is one of the most underestimated forms of strength. In a world that rewards instant reactions, immediate answers, and emotional expression, the ability to pause has become almost revolutionary. Most people believe power belongs to the person who responds fastest, speaks loudest, or takes action immediately. But speed without clarity can become a weakness. The person who reacts too quickly often allows emotion to make decisions that reason would later question. Think about what happens when someone provokes you. Your first impulse may be to defend yourself, explain yourself, respond immediately, or prove that the other person is wrong. But in that moment, you are not necessarily acting from strength. You are reacting to a stimulus. Someone else has pressed a psychological button, and you have allowed them to determine your behavior. The ability to pause, break that pattern. A pause creates distance between what happens and what you choose to do about it. That distance is where judgment develops. You begin asking better questions. Is this situation actually important? Am I responding to facts or assumptions? Will this decision matter tomorrow? What outcome do I really want? Could silence serve me better than an immediate response? This does not mean becoming passive or avoiding difficult situations. Strategic patience is not weakness, indecision, or fear. It is controlled timing. Sometimes action is necessary, but intelligent action requires understanding when to move and when to wait. Consider a person who receives an insulting message. One person immediately replies while angry. They write things they later regret, escalate the conflict, and create consequences that could have been avoided. Another person reads the message, recognizes the emotion rising inside them, and decides not to respond until they are calm. The situation has not changed, but the quality of the decision has completely changed. This principle applies far beyond conflict. It applies to relationships, business, career decisions, personal goals, and major life choices. Do not accept an opportunity simply because you are excited. Do not reject something simply because you are afraid. Do not make permanent decisions during temporary emotional storms. Patience allows information to reveal itself. People reveal themselves over time. Circumstances reveal their consequences over time. Your own emotions become clearer with time. What appears urgent today may seem insignificant a week from now. Train yourself to recognize the difference between urgency and importance. Not everything demanding your immediate attention deserves it. The mature person learns to sit with uncertainty without desperately trying to eliminate it. They can wait for more information. They can tolerate discomfort. They can resist the temptation to force an outcome. This is where discipline and emotional intelligence meet. You do not need to respond to every provocation. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to chase every opportunity. You do not need to prove yourself in every conversation. Sometimes the most intelligent move is to observe. Watch what people consistently do rather than becoming hypnotized by what they promise. Watch how situations develop rather than assuming you already know the ending. Watch your own emotions rather than immediately obeying them. With time, patterns become visible, and patterns are often more valuable than isolated events. Strategic patience also protects your future self. Before acting, ask yourself whether the decision you are making today will create a problem for the person you will become tomorrow. Emotional impulses think about the present moment. Wisdom considers consequences. Your goal is not to become slow. Your goal is to become deliberate. Move quickly when clarity demands action. Wait when uncertainty demands observation. Speak when your words can improve the situation. Remain silent when speaking would only feed your ego. There is enormous power in becoming difficult to provoke, difficult to rush, and difficult to pressure into decisions that violate your values. The world will constantly attempt to hurry you. People will demand immediate answers. Emotions will demand immediate action. Circumstances will make you feel that everything must be decided now, but you are allowed to pause. You are allowed to think. You are allowed to gather information. You are allowed to change your mind when new evidence appears. And every time you create that space between impulse and action, you strengthen the most important form of power you can possess, self-command. Eventually, you begin to realize that patience is not simply waiting for something to happen. It is using the waiting period to become wiser, calmer, better prepared, and more capable. You are not standing still. You are sharpening your judgment. And when the right moment finally arrives, you do not move from panic. You move from clarity. That is the difference between reaction and strategy. That is the difference between being controlled by circumstances and learning how to respond to them. And sometimes the decision that changes your future is not the action you take. It is the reaction you finally learn to control. Your attention is one of the most valuable forms of power you possess, yet most people give it away without realizing what they are doing. Every day, your mind is surrounded by voices competing for your attention. Social media, notifications, arguments, entertainment, opinions, comparison, and endless information. The danger is not simply that these things consume your time. The deeper danger is that they gradually shape the direction of your mind. What you repeatedly focus on becomes psychologically familiar. If you constantly focus on other people's achievements, you may begin measuring your life through comparison. If you constantly consume conflict, your mind can become conditioned to search for conflict. If you repeatedly focus on rejection, you may begin interpreting neutral situations as personal rejection. Attention does not merely observe reality. Over time, it influences the reality you experience internally. This is why disciplined people protect their attention. They understand that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every criticism requires an explanation. Not every disagreement requires participation. Not every notification deserves to interrupt your concentration. And not every person's opinion deserves a permanent place in your mind. Imagine your attention as a spotlight. Wherever you point it, that area becomes brighter while everything else becomes less visible. If you constantly point that spotlight toward distractions, your goals remain in darkness. But if you deliberately direct it toward learning, meaningful relationships, disciplined work, and personal growth, your abilities begin to develop. This does not mean ignoring the world. It means becoming selective about what you allow to influence you. Before giving something your attention, ask yourself, will this make me wiser, stronger, calmer, or more capable? If the answer is consistently no, question why you are giving it so much mental space. The ability to concentrate is becoming increasingly valuable because distraction has become increasingly available. A person who can sit quietly, think deeply, read carefully, work consistently, and resist the urge to constantly check what everyone else is doing possesses a tremendous psychological advantage. Your attention also determines what kind of person you become. Focus on discipline, and discipline becomes familiar. Focus on learning, and curiosity grows. Focus on solutions, and your mind becomes more constructive. Focus endlessly on problems, and problems can begin to dominate your perception. The goal is not to control every thought that enters your mind. That is impossible. The goal is to decide which thoughts deserve to stay. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can become more deliberate about what you repeatedly look at, listen to, think about, and emotionally invest in. Guard your attention because your attention eventually becomes your direction, and your direction, repeated long enough, becomes your future. The world is constantly changing, and one of the greatest psychological advantages you can develop is the ability to change with it without losing yourself. Many people believe that being strong means holding on to the same opinions, strategies, habits, and expectations, regardless of what happens around them. But there is a difference between having principles and being rigid. Principles give you direction. Rigidity prevents you from learning. A wise person knows the difference. Adaptability begins with accepting reality as it is rather than as you wish it were. This sounds simple, but psychologically it can be extremely difficult. The human mind naturally prefers familiarity. We become attached to routines, beliefs, relationships, identities, and expectations because they provide a sense of certainty. When reality challenges them, the ego often reacts defensively. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from this?" we ask, "How can I prove that I was right?" That question can keep a person trapped for years. Imagine someone who has worked toward a particular goal for a long time. They have invested energy, money, emotions, and identity into it. Eventually, evidence appears that their original strategy is no longer working. One person becomes defensive. They continue doing the same thing simply because changing direction would force them to admit that the old approach was ineffective. Another person studies the situation honestly. They recognize what has changed, identify what they can control, and adjust their strategy. The second person may experience temporary disappointment, but they preserve something far more valuable: their ability to move forward. Adaptability is not surrender. It is intelligent adjustment. A river does not lose its identity because it changes its course around an obstacle. It continues moving toward its destination while responding to the landscape in front of it. You should develop the same mentality. Your goal may remain stable while your method changes. Perhaps your original career plan fails. Learn. Perhaps a relationship changes. Learn. Perhaps someone you trusted disappoints you. Learn. Perhaps an opportunity disappears. Learn. Perhaps the version of yourself you believed you needed to become no longer feels authentic. Learn. Every unexpected event contains information. This does not mean every setback is secretly wonderful. Some experiences are painful simply because they are painful. But even difficult experiences can teach you something about your boundaries, judgment, priorities, habits, or expectations. The adaptable person does not waste suffering by learning nothing from it. They ask, "What is reality showing me?" That question requires humility. You must be willing to update your beliefs when evidence changes. You must be willing to admit that you misunderstood someone. You must be willing to recognize that a strategy that worked previously may not work now. Your ego wants consistency because consistency feels safe. Your growth requires flexibility because flexibility creates options, and options are a form of power. When you can adapt, you are less dependent on one outcome, one person, one strategy, or one definition of success. You become capable of finding another route when the original path closes. This is why resilience is not simply the ability to endure. It is the ability to learn, adjust, and continue. Do not become so attached to your past that you sacrifice your future just to remain consistent with who you used to be. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to change your strategy. You are allowed to outgrow old habits. You are allowed to become someone your former self would not recognize. Your principles can remain firm while your methods evolve. That is not weakness. That is intelligence. And when you learn to adapt without abandoning your values, you become difficult to break. Not because life stops changing, but because you become capable of changing intelligently with it.